Sometimes the vision was only that far ahead, what I'm going to preach on next Sunday. Then it was that far ahead, what we're going to do in the next year. And then it was that far ahead, we're going to build a new building. Sometimes God shows us 10 miles, 10 years, and sometimes He only shows us 10 minutes. But God will show us the way. And He gives that to a pastor. One of the things that I've seen that have split churches is when leadership gets divided. In other words, someone starts listening to this TV preacher or this radio preacher, and they see the vision that preacher is giving, and they try to bring that into their church, and they didn't give it to those who He called in the leadership of the church. That just causes division. That's like you have in your house and you have in your children, and your son comes over and says, "Hey, Dad, I'm going to take the car tonight, and I'm going down to this place." And Dad says, "No, you're not." "Well, I was talking to the neighbor man, and he said you should let me do that." My dad would say, "That neighbor man has his own house. This is my house." God says that He lifts up the leadership in the house. This church isn't ran like any other church. I understand that. There are things that other churches do that we can't do. There are things that we can do that other churches can't do. We just follow the Lord in what He wants to do, and the only way you'll keep unity is if that comes from the top down. That's what our calling is. And when you start taking advice from outside of the church, it's usually just about you. It isn't about the unity of the church. It's about you and your promotion. So I pray for the unity of this church, that you continue to trust the leadership. Because without trust, there is nothing. If you do not trust me with a vision, then you don't belong here. I'm sorry. All I can be is honest with you now. I don't have to fool around. But you will cause division. It don't matter who you are. You say, "But I've got a great idea." Then sit down with the lead pastor and talk with them about it and see if that is the way that God implants it into you. I am here because I submitted to the church in defiance, and I submitted to the pastoral leadership, and he said that I should come to North Cove and preach, so I did. He was my pastor. I remember going to the altar and saying, "Lord, I don't know what to do with my life right now, but I will follow whatever Dick Latham says, because he's my pastor." I got up from that altar, and 3 days later, he asked me to preach on a Wednesday night. Then he sent me to North Cove, which is this church, when we were over on North Cove Boulevard. Then I went to Wauseon and preached a Sunday, and then back to North Cove, and I've been here for 37 years. That's how God works. God calls leadership. And I take my job, and I have taken my job for 37 years very seriously, and I've not tried to make any selfish decisions. The decisions that I've made have been in prayer, and it's about what is best for this congregation as a whole, not for me. Terry worked, we sacrificed. There were times when you didn't know how bad we were hurting, but God always took care of us. So God says you bring those needs and those prayers, and that is my prayer request for the church, that you unite in unity. And you realize, not my will, but thy will be done, Lord. That means we give up our will for His will. Romans 12:12, rejoice in hope, be patient in tribulation, be constant in prayer. Your prayer life will determine your Christian life. Your prayer life will determine your joy. Your prayer life will determine how you deal with circumstances in life. Worry. Do you worry, preacher? Really, I don't. I'm being honest. Will I? I don't know how. They say chemo affects your brain somehow. My brain's been affected by something my whole life. Worry is a conversation you have with yourself about things that you cannot change. Life is what it is. You will have what you have. You'll deal with what you deal with. But prayer is a conversation you have with God about things that He can change. Let your reasonableness be known to everyone. Philippians 4, 5, and 7. The Lord is at hand. Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything by praying and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God, and the peace of God will surpass all understanding and will guide your hearts, your mind in Jesus Christ. Pray, pray, pray. God listens. God hears. I thought of this on driving home from Cleveland. We went in there, and immediately they took us from one room to another room to a doctor, from that room to another doctor. I mean, there was no in-between time. The doctor goes out, and another doctor comes in, and then the doctor goes out, and he brings in two other people that are head of the test program, and then they set it up, and then they take us over to where they do the chemotherapy and tell us about how that's going to go. And I mean, it was about 5:30 before we got out of there, but it was constant from 1 o'clock on, bang, 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 bang. From the time they got my name that I was in the building. And I thought, that's just how heaven works. From the time that God hears our prayer, boom, things start to happen. You know that silent prayer that you raise your hand for? It may be silent here, but not in heaven. God hears it and He turns loose. But we accept His will. Is anyone among you suffering? Let him pray. Is anyone cheerful? Let him sing praises. Albert Einstein, Billy Graham told this story, so I'm going to tell it. Albert Einstein got on a train that he rode several different places, but it was the place where he started anyway. He got on the train, he was sitting there, and the bellman or the conductor, whoever it was, came up and said, "Ticket, please." And he went. And he said, "It's okay, Dr. Einstein, I know who you are. Don't worry about the ticket." And he went on and through the next car. He comes back and he sees Dr. Einstein down on his knees looking under the seats. And looking, and he said, "I told you it's okay. You don't need the ticket. I know who you are." And he said, "I know who I am too, but I don't know where I'm going." Let me tell you something. I know where I'm going. I've known that for a long time. The Lord knows the number of hairs on your head. He knows the number on mine. And I told him, as the number of hairs on my head start getting lower, pick up on the number of these cells that I want him to work on. Who knows? I might preach here 12 years from now. Might. Because I'm not going to die till I do. And I'm not going to walk around like I'm a walking dead person. So don't treat me like one. Don't assert authority over where I sit. My dad and his dad before him was always Dad until he passed. And my children, I'll be their dad. And when I die, I hope they still hear me. My brother Jim texted me and said, I don't know what to say, only that I love you. And I said, Jim, don't worry. If something happens to me, some night I'm going to scare the fire out of you. We're a bunch of people here in this church that are alive, but we're all going to die. You better have your ticket punched and know where you're going. We walk in unity. We put God first in everything. We know God listens. The question is, will we listen to God? Because he also speaks. He said, let not your heart be troubled. For you believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you, I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you unto myself, that where I am, there ye may be also. And where I go, you know, and the way you know. And that they are two things that I know. The way is through Jesus Christ. Lord, forgive me of my sins. How you allow your Holy Spirit to come into me and guide me and lead me, because I no longer want to live for me, I want to live for you. I don't know what tomorrow will bring, but I know who holds tomorrow. Sometimes when you're sick, you don't realize you're sick, because I feel pretty good right now. Then I look over here, my whole family shows up, so I must be sick. Eddie Paul and his wife from Indianapolis, Lisa from all the way from Defiance. She's the oldest Fry grandchild. Her husband retired as a dentist in Oakwood and has been pastoring the church in DuPont because their pastor retired. We can't afford him. What I'm saying is, circumstances in life are going to come to you. Some of you have buried husbands and wives and children and grandchildren. And the only way you get through that is trusting God. Some of you have raised children that are rebellious. Keep praying. Keep praying. Because God will keep speaking to them and put people in their way to speak to them so that they know they need to make that turn. Keep praying. God listens. You hear me? He listens. When you shout, he listens in the quietness of your heart. He listens. So bank on it. You're talking to a God. I need to read that verse to you again that I started with. For we have not a high priest, speaking of Jesus Christ, which cannot be touched with the feelings of our infirmities. God can be touched by us, but was in all points tempted like as we are, and yet without sin. He came to give eternal life. If the church and the people that are Christians would present it like right, the majority of the people in the world would be Christian. But because we want so much of the world in us, they don't hear us. Let's stand. I do want to say something this morning. Listen along, raise your hand, right over here. She's been our janitor how many years? 7 years. Church has always been. She took a job with
Thanks for tuning in to the Heritage Church of God this morning. We're so glad that you came with us today. We're doing our best to reach out into other areas in our community and other areas around our state and our nation. What you do helps us do that. We live in a very dark time. I think you know that. We all know that. People are depressed. People don't know where to turn. Gas prices are high. Government doesn't seem to listen. But you can't blame the darkness on the light. And Jesus said, I am the light of the world.
We don't want him coming
and
back.
And we believe that. We believe that we can take Jesus in to people that can't normally see us, don't normally go through a church door, that we can help spread that light and spread that faith so that people can have that peace that passes all understanding. And today, we're thankful for our church that gives good and helps well. Well, we're going to invite you that are listening. If you believe in what we're doing, you like what we're doing, we can do more with your support. So if you'd like to support Heritage Church and the outreach that we have, Jackie's going to tell you just how you can do that.
If you'd like to support the ministry here at Heritage Church, there are several ways in which you can give. You can text the keyword HC Tithe to 77977. That'll take you directly to our mobile giving platform. You can also access online giving through our website, heritagetoledo.church. Or if you'd like, you can mail us a gift. 3520 Strayer Road, Maumee, Ohio, 43537. It is our prayer that this service has blessed you today. We thank you for your generosity. Your giving funds our payroll, our operating costs, our missionaries, the outreach that we do in the community, and everything it takes to put on these live broadcasts.
Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you next week. God bless.